Hi everyone, welcome to the Robert Show. We are here at NVIDIA GTC in Washington, and I'm super excited to be with Adel here from NVIDIA. Adel, welcome to the Robert Show. Today I'm excited
Thanks
to
for
chat.
having me.
Yeah, today I'm excited to chat about various things. Obviously, Nemotron is one thing, and also wanting to know how does it help the real world agents. But before we get into all the details, we have a quick intro? Can you tell us more about what you do at NVIDIA?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you again for having me.
For sure.
I'm responsible for product management in our enterprise AI group.
Nice.
What I typically do is nowadays just talk about agents. We provide libraries and tools, not just in terms of models,
Yep.
but we also provide microservices, libraries, and toolkits to help enterprises manage the lifecycle of agents. And rather than have enterprises guessing what models work best for what use case, we publish what we call blueprints. And they're building blocks for creating agentic workflows.
That's awesome. Can't wait to deep dive into, because obviously in the last one and a half year, what I've been hearing all is agents. So let's deep dive into it. And let's talk about Nemotron, obviously. Which Nemotron models matter most for production agents today and why? And I'm pretty sure you talk to a lot of developers and leaders out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you start with the use case, right? You start with the use case. And from there you start deciding what is the best model that's fit for your use case, right? And you know, we're not doing agents for the sake of doing agents, right?
Exactly.
One of the first agents we built at NVIDIA, before agents became mainstream, before they became a buzzword, was to do the contextual analysis of if a vulnerability is exploitable inside of a given container.
Yep.
Now, why did we have to do that? We started publishing all sorts of different software, and frankly, we just couldn't keep up with the pace of software that we had to make available, so we had to come up and stand up agents to be able to utilize that. Now, we started using reasoning models, right? Because a Nemotron reasoning model is able to define a plan, go do the scavenger hunt of trying to figure out whether the dependencies for a given vulnerability are inside the container and can be exploited. And so it really is fit for purpose.
Yep. I think you mentioned a very important point is start with the use case.
Yeah.
Because most of the enterprise leaders and even the developers, they kind of want to, obviously solve a certain problem, and it can have various solutions to it, right? Even agents can be worked in various ways. But I'm also curious to know, how should teams choose between Nemotron for synthetic data, instruction tuning, and reasoning? How does that kind of cover a good ground? I know you mentioned a little bit about reasoning, but kind of wanting to know how should they be aware of what should we be choosing?
And look, those things aren't mutually exclusive, right? I would say those things aren't mutually exclusive. Nowadays, reasoning models are quite powerful and can build a plan,
right?
And then can reflect on that plan to make sure they executed the right way.
Yep.
But that comes at a cost, right? A reasoning model will require some time to think, right? And so sometimes you don't need it to think that much. At which point you might consider, instruct tuning or fine tuning or post training,
right?
And so. Again, it goes back to this fit for purpose. More often than not, when we're building workflows, when we're building systems internally, it is a mix of those.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned about synthetic data. I think that's an important point. One thing that we see with a lot of enterprises, frankly, is more often than not, they don't have enough data for their use case. They want to start customizing a model or distilling a model. They call it the cold start problem. And so, anomaly detection is one of those. When you have these events that are rare, right? You're able to then create synthetic data, and that helps you optimize your workflow.
Yeah, really great points here, and thanks for these insights. I'm kind of also wanting to shift gears a little bit towards openness, right?
Love that
what
topic.
does openness mean here for licensing data and evals for customers that can verify? Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to, right? Look, Neimotron is the most open model that exists out there. Right, and let me clarify what that means, because first time I heard, I'm like, what? You're either open or you're not open. But let me clarify what open really means. It's about embodying an open approach to developing AI. And when you're embodying an open approach to developing AI, it's not just the open weights that you make available on Hugging Face. Yes, we absolutely do that. But in addition to providing the open weights with permissible licenses, right, we also provide the data sets that we utilize to train those models, right? Again, going back with the most permissible licenses available. So we provide the open weights, we provide the data sets, we provide the recipes and the algorithms through which we train those models as well.
Right.
And then there's tons of papers that are written being open really drives the velocity, the innovation, like all this excitement that's happening is frankly because of that openness.
Yeah, I'm kind of also curious to know about the path, right? Because you talk to a lot of developers, talk to a lot of enterprise leaders, and even the customers. What is the recommended path to deploy with NIM and keep latency and cost in check? Because that is something I'm pretty sure a lot of people are wanting to be sure of as well, right?
Yeah, look, first off, it goes back to start with your problem, right? Identify your problem.
Right.
We have different names for different modalities, whether they're reasoning models, whether they're for world foundation models, speech models, et cetera. It starts with that use case. Look to address and solve your problem first.
Yep.
Right, and then the beauty about NIMs, and going back to why I needed that agent to help me secure those runtimes, is they're portable. So you get to bring them as close as you need to, like bring them closer to your data. That's one of the beauties of it. And then look to optimize for costs, right? And those optimizations can be in what we just discussed, right? Using reinforcement learning to do some distillation. So turning a bigger model to a smaller footprint, right? And other means as well could be, more traditional fine-tuning techniques. And so I would say, start by addressing your use case. The NIM is portable, so you can bring it to where the data is, and then look to optimize for costs, either by post-training or by, really pushing yourself to see if, do you need a reasoning model for every step, or can you utilize an instruct model? And more often than not, you'll find it's a mix of the two.
Yeah, good point there. Also, I'm pretty sure a lot of developers and leaders that you talk to are also concerned about the safety, right? So when it comes to safety, how do you think you can measure safety and retrieval quality of multimodal RAG in enterprise use? Any thoughts around that, Adel?
Well, yeah, two different dimensions. Certainly on RAG, that's one of the things. You want your RAG to be accurate, right? You want your retrieval systems to be accurate. That's first and foremost.
Right.
Right? Hallucinations are real, but if it's retrieving data, you want it to be accurate. So we spend a lot of time. I always joke around and say, some of our embedding, retrieval, and re-ranking models are our best kept secrets, right? People don't talk about it because it's not as hot as reasoning, right?
Yes.
But they're foundational to everything it is that we do. They're foundational to everything that we do. Now, so once you have, and we've got great models, we just released open source the embedding and the re-ranking. They're 1 billion parameter models, and they're fantastic.
Yep.
I think they were leaderboards on the MTAB. But in terms of once you deploy your agent, then you also have to implement the guardrails in place.
Yes, exactly.
Right, you have to implement the guardrails in place, make sure they stay within topic, make sure you have safety in mind, right? One other thing that I would caution as well is, yes, you want agents to bring autonomy, and we all want that, right? But more often than not, I think it is important that humans remain in the loop, right? Humans are part of that loop. And sometimes the reason why humans are part of that loop is because they also establish trust with their agents. It's almost like a companion. And then when you start trusting that agent more and more, right, then you give it more autonomy.
It is so important, and you mentioned a very important point, which is human in the loop, because what I feel is often we are misunderstood that agents will actually do everything. It will act as a companion, but if there's a human in the loop, the guardrails will be in place, there'll be obviously safety in place as well, and that's the best way to have human in the loop as well.
Well, let me tell you, right, there's also another dimension, which is that trust factor.
Yes.
We tried this out, right? Our agents became really good at understanding whether a vulnerability can be exploited.
Yep.
But our developers, frankly, would run the agents, but then do that contextual analysis themselves.
Yep.
They didn't know what was inside that black box. When we actually slowed down the agents and brought them along as a companion with the developer, we saw a lot more engagement, and now they actually use it as it was intended.
Oh wow! It just helps them to get the productivity much higher.
Absolutely.
And with more trust as well. So nothing better than that.
Absolutely.
One more quick question for you: if anyone who wants to get started with Nemotron, want to start using agents, what is the best way?
Hey, I'm going to be biased here. I'm going to tell you, go to build.nvidia.com. What we do
Okay.
over there is we expose all of our NIMs, right?
Yes.
You can try them as an API, you can download them as a container,
Right.
with a free developer license. We also publish our blueprints.
Yes.
Those reference workflows that I was talking about. We have that CVE analyst agent that I just mentioned
Yes.
as a blueprint available there.
Yep.
We have a deep researcher as a blueprint that you can deploy fully on-premise, so you have that amazing latency that we discussed whilst maintaining that compliance. So build.nvidia.com is where I'd get started.
Love it. This is great, Adel. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for sharing all the
no
great
doubt.
insight. I think you and your team have been building great things for the larger community, and we've been hearing and learning a lot about agents. So thanks to you and your team. one last question, and that is for you and your team. If they want to follow you, the work that you and your team have been putting out together, which is the best place to do it?
Oh, wow.
Maybe follow you on LinkedIn?
Yeah,
if you're
LinkedIn.
active? Yeah.
Adel El Hallak is my name. You can find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Yep.
I'm trying to be active as much as I can, but we also work a lot, right?
Yes,
But
you're right.
but the team's work is represented on build.nvidia.com and
Fantastic.
through all the other NVIDIA developer channels that we have on social.
Love it. I'll make sure to share those links with them and obviously tag you as well. But thanks for doing this. We'll keep the conversation
man, I
going.
appreciate
Have a
you.
fantastic
Thank you,
conference
Ravi.
ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.